Welcome to Aunt Betty Renaissance Queen, Episode 3. What is in the news on today's filming is the Supreme Court has finally declared Stump's tariffs unconstitutional, which we knew all along. This delay from the Supreme Court further illustrates their criminality because they could have stopped this a long time ago. What is the nefarious reason they waited so long? And Stump is about to start an unnecessary and unprovoked war with Iran. Now let's remember, Stump ran on not starting unprovoked wars and ran on lowering the costs of eggs, groceries, rent, healthcare, etc., etc., etc. To date, Stump has welched on every campaign promise. He may have tightened access over the southern border. Not even sure about that. They brag about doing that. But more on immigration in a moment. We want to be clear that Stump never intended to follow through with the campaign promises. They were always lies. And the stain does not belong to Donnie solely, because currently the world is populated with countless evil people. Sadly, the stain is also on our society that has devolved to a point where there is a large percentage of our population that is gullible enough to have allowed themselves to be conned by such a creature. But Aunt Betty is here to assure everyone that there are things we can do to improve our society. And this is the mission of our show. The evil power brokers want us to feel defeated, but we will not give them that satisfaction. Now let's start today by exposing one of the threads of the tried and true divide and rule tactic. These evil people are going hard in this realm. They are trying to pit races against each other, religions against each other, men against women, rural against city, education distinctions, sexuality distinctions. This is the Tower of Babel on steroids. And it is manufactured by the evil overlords in order to control us. And now Aunt Betty will explain why the brown racial purge by the government is wrong. So we will start out by reading the definition out of Webster's dictionary, the definition of the word accountability. The obligation of an individual or organization to account for their activities, accept the responsibility for them, and disclose the results in a transparent manner. Aunt Betty brings this up because our government and business sector, which frankly controls the government, has encouraged illegal immigration for decades because it was cheap labor. Full stop. So it is morally unethical to have encouraged all this migration for decades. Then just one day decide that we don't want them, cruelly round them up, detain them in concentration camps, and if they are lucky, get deported to a country that is not even equipped to support them. Because it is a lie that they are doing this for our safety. The government, we mean. It is a lie that the government is doing this to help the economy. These immigrants are performing hard manual labor that nobody else wants to do. And it's costing us taxpayers billions of our tax dollars for these roundup operations. The ICE paramilitary forces are receiving $60,000 signing bonuses just to get hired on top of their salaries that's coming out of our tax dollars. Private contractors are receiving billions of dollars of our tax money to build and operate concentration camps for these people. This is one of the reasons why the government has cut our health care. So it is our responsibility to be aware of these crimes and hold our leaders accountable and to initiate ethical reforms. But we can do it. Go team, go.
What are they?
What is this? Here we have a pole and some kind of tin, kind of nickel-plated tin. We're guessing it's about 100 years old. We come in, we don't see any letterings or any markings of any kind. We'll look underneath. There are rings and rows. Look at that. It sort of looks like a flying saucer. What is this? If you have an idea, then leave it in the comments. Now, the winners will receive no prizes. What is this? Later in the show, we will reveal what this is. We'll give you a little clue. Some people may consider it irritating. Since 1973 until only 2016, Donnie has been involved in over 4,000 lawsuits. Stop and think about that. 4,000 lawsuits. How could any honorable person be involved in that many lawsuits? It simply does not track. Some of these lawsuits were from women who have accused Donnie of sexual abuse. In Donnie's entire life, growing up as a spoiled brat, he has never encountered boundaries. He has been allowed to do anything he has ever wanted to with no consequences. With his natural predatory disposition unchecked, it was natural for Donnie to hunt women as a pastime. He and Jeffrey Epstein were birds of a feather. They were best friends for years and hunted women and girls together for fun. It wasn't until Donnie stabbed Epstein in the back over a real estate deal that their relationship ended. Not because Donnie found out Epstein was a pervert. Donnie owned a beauty pageant that featured underage girls, and Donnie bragged on the Howard Stern radio show about being able to go into the dressing room and to repeat the words Donnie said on the radio to inspect the girls undressed. Donnie owned a modeling agency and associated with other people who owned modeling agencies, where it has now been established was the sole purpose to traffic young women and girls sexually. Now stop and think about it. There's only one reason why you buy beauty pageants and buy modeling agencies, and models are all young and stuff, and that is to surround yourself with the prey. The legal cases, moving on, against Donnie were not witch hunts, as he calls them. The two local government cases out of New York State that made it to trial ended up in convictions. One by a jury of Donnie's peers, which were co-selected by Donnie's own lawyers, and one by a judge whose Donnie's lawyers also agreed to hear the case as a bench trial. That means no jury. A catastrophic failure of the legal system occurred during this time, though. It was the judgment of the courts at the time to not televise or broadcast live the trials of Donnie's crimes. It was their opinion that Donnie's team would make a mockery of the proceedings and play for the cameras. Aunt Betty knew at the time that this was a calamity of judgment because every day after the trial, Donnie stood in front of the cameras and lied to the public about what occurred in the courtroom that day. Donnie lied about the judges being biased against him. Donnie threatened the clerks and the families of the judges, sending coded messages to his MAGA base to threaten these people. And the base got the codes, and the base did threaten to murder the people attempting to bring Donnie to justice, leading to these people having to spend money and employ bodyguards to help keep them alive. Now, Donnie lied every day and said it was a witch hunt and that there was no evidence. Donnie released a photo of himself ready to bash New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg's head in with a baseball bat. And though it was tradition for prosecutors to not comment on ongoing trials, it was a tragedy that an exception was not made this time. The prosecutors remained silent while Donnie ran the narrative in the public sphere and steamrolled over the prosecution during these trials. And most of the public to this day doesn't know what really happened and thinks Donnie received a raw deal. And Donnie is president today partly because of it. Who should also be prosecuted and punished for treason is the mainstream news media, because the media filmed and broadcasted Donnie's lies every day, knowing what Donnie was saying were lies and did not correct the record. Aunt Betty listened to the reporting of independent journalists who were in the courtroom every day that reported a completely different narrative. What a surprise! For example, Donnie whined over and over in front of the TV cameras that the biased, mean judge wouldn't even let Donnie attend Barron's graduation. When in fact, the judge did cancel trial days just so Donnie could go. But did the mainstream media report that part? We don't think so. When the judges attempted to protect the lives of innocent people, requiring Donnie to edit his language, Donnie ejected over and over that his First Amendment rights were being violated. Well, it's more of Donnie's hypocrisy, because now if anyone speaks the truth about Donnie's lies, crimes, or says anything against him that he doesn't like, he will threaten to sue you or send the FBI after you and try to put you in jail and literally violate your First Amendment rights. Donnie sued CBS and the New York Times and pollsters who reported unfavorable results. He's now threatening comedians and on and on. Aunt Betty thinks this phenomenon needs to be clarified. It's established precedent that if a person voluntarily inhabits the public sphere, it's with the understanding that people will say things about you, true or otherwise, that you may not appreciate. And that this simply comes with the territory of celebrity. But once again, the rules apply to everyone else, but not Donnie. The two E. Jean Carroll sex abuse cases, which found Donnie liable for millions of dollars, were also decided by juries of Donnie's peers, whose Donnie's lawyers helped select, so there was no corruption there. The two federal cases, the two big ones that Donnie was sure to lose and lead to convictions, and the only reason why Donnie ran for president in 24 was to stay out of jail. Donnie declared his candidacy a year earlier than anyone ever had, so that Donnie could bitch that the trials were merely politically motivated, saying that the trials were simply to hurt Donnie's chances of winning the election, and not because he was actually a criminal. Donnie blatantly and illegally begged the oil industry right in front of the TV for money for his campaign, saying, "I'll pay you back in government favors." because the American people were not donating to Donnie's campaign. It wasn't until Elon Musk bribed Donnie with almost $200 million that Musk pumped into the campaign in return for government favors. Because of all the money donated to Donnie from the super rich corporate establishment elite, Donnie drew an inside straight and made it back into the White House. Inside straight, that's old jargon for draw poker reference there. No one plays draw poker anymore. It's all Texas Hold'em. Though there is evidence emerging that the 24 election was actually rigged on Donnie's behalf. And there is a good chance Kamala Harris did win, but it wasn't by a large enough margin to make the win theft-proof. But again, by Donnie shamelessly braying for 5 years that 2020 was rigged, that Donnie inoculated himself from fact finders exposing him of actually doing it. More on the 2024 rigged election in the future. Independent watchdogs have documented over 30,000 lies told by Donnie in his first term. Just Google, how many lies did Donnie tell in his first term?
Other things to do with a blow dryer.
Pumpkins just have a way of bringing the kid out of all of us. We've always enjoyed pumpkins, and Aunt Betty loves to grow pumpkins. So it is now February, and these pumpkins have been on the porch since October, and now they are finally ready for the compost pile. So we are going to save some seeds from these pumpkins and grow them in the garden this year. So I'm not sure what these pumpkins are called. This is kind of one of these newer novelty ones, sort of like a sunburst style pumpkin. It's a smaller, medium-sized one. That's probably, well, you can see by the size of Aunt Betty's hand, probably about 10 inches high or so. We already saved some seeds from the traditional style pumpkins that we grew last year. We are saving the seeds from this pumpkin here, and we want to save the seeds from this cool sort of a gourd pumpkin. Now, we only have one nice strainer that we want to use, so we clean the seeds out with this spoon and clean all of the meat and stuff away from them. Now we could just leave these seeds in here to dry, but we want to reuse our little colander here right away to clean the seeds here. So this is an ideal opportunity to use the blow dryer. The reason why we're drying these and not just letting them dry on their own is anyone who has cleaned seeds out of a pumpkin before, remember how slimy they get. So if you just dumped these into a dish, we believe they would just all stick together. In the past, we have actually washed these with a very small amount of dish soap to get the slime off, which we think is not going to hurt the seed, but since we don't know that for a fact, we're not quite sure what a very mild solution of dish soap and water, how that would hurt the seed. But maybe there might be some sort of enzyme or some sort of thing that's on the seed that is important, is essential for germination or something. So we decided not to take a chance and just to dry these with the blow dryer. And then now we have some nice seeds. And now we have freed up our colander to do the seeds from that little pumpkin there. Once again, another marvelous thing to do with a blow dryer. Let's talk about the myth of the 2020 stolen election. One would think that Donnie's criminal Department of Justice, being Donnie's personal legal vengeance squad, and are going hard after Donnie's enemies, would also be indicting all the people involved in stealing his election from him in 2020. After all, Donnie has vomited for years and still vomits in front of the cameras about the hordes and the mountains of evidence on the stolen election. His followers will tell you all about the evidence. But if you ask them about what specific evidence, you hear crickets. These people have probably never even stopped to think that they actually haven't ever even heard any specific evidence. They've just heard for so long, over and over, all the evidence, all the evidence. Their brains have made the leap to accept the premise as concrete fact. But the reason you never hear this so-called undeniable evidence is because there is none. Donnie fired his cybersecurity chief, Chris Krebs, when Krebs assured everyone at the time that there was no fraud. Ho, 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 no, Krebsy boy, we'll have none of that. Out you go. It was always a lie. Now, the following is a list here of primary rules that we want to go over. Okay. Never allow the public to cool off. Never admit fault or wrong. Never concede that there ever may be any good in your enemy. Never leave room for alternatives. Never accept blame. Concentrate on one enemy and blame them for everything. People will believe a big lie before they will believe a little lie. And if you repeat it often enough, over and over, then eventually everyone will believe it. Now, that's Donnie in a nutshell. But this list of rules was compiled by psychological profiler Walter Langer about, drumroll, you guessed it, Adolf Hitler. So you see, Donnie repeated the lie over and over and over in front of the cameras. Ordinary people simply couldn't believe that such an outrageous thing could be said unless it was true. And Donnie's goon squad repeated the lies as well. Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and a bunch of others. These people went into court over and over and 60 times to repeat the lie. But when the judges, including Donnie-appointed judges, asked for the evidence, well, they had none to offer. Giuliani actually said to one of the judges, "Well, we have theories, Your Honor." Theories! Since when are court trials prosecuted on theories? They're supposed to be executed on facts. Donnie's lawyer, Jenna Ellis, even pled guilty for lying about it afterwards. Of course, we do all remember how the drumbeat of the big lie began. It was a simple but insidious little phrase. It was probably a plot hatched by the Republican leadership after seeing that Donnie was actually going to go there with the blatant accusations of stolen election. It's established history that the Republican leadership met at the Willard Hotel the day after President Obama was elected to plot how to destroy Obama's presidency. So this was their chance to cast a pall over Biden's presidency before it even started, because all the Republicans were in lockstep. We remember the phrase, don't we? There are questions. Fox TV would line up all the usual suspects like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, who would say, well, I have questions. Let's just look into this. Let's just let this play out. All we ever heard was, there are questions. I have questions. And when Giuliani tried to lean into the lie after a point, thinking, well, we better start coming up with some evidence or so, Giuliani tried to generate some evidence and falsely accuse Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman of ballot stuffing when they were counting the ballots, I think down in Georgia, though, because he thought he could get away with bullying a couple of our African-American sisters. They won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Giuliani over it. Sadly, it's not illegal to lie in front of the TV cameras, but it still is illegal to lie in court, unless you are a Republican lying in front of the Supreme Court. Another lie said over and over was how corrupt President Biden and his family was. The Biden crime family. Lord, it just sounds ridiculous. And 1 minute, President Biden is a scheming criminal mastermind, and in the next, he's a doddering, feeble, old fool, drool coming down. Which one is it? Why didn't more of the public notice these inconsistencies of characterizations? But that was how Donnie referred to Biden. That and, Crooked Joe Biden. Donnie had to recycle that term because it used to be Crooked Hillary. But Donnie's never been accused of a breadth of creativity. Then the criminal Republican-led Congress of 2022 launched those fake corruption investigations into President Biden and Hunter, which is such an illustration of Republican shamelessness, seeing as Republican Committee Chair Jim Jordan covered up sex abuse against the Ohio State student wrestlers when Jordan was assistant coaching the team. The committee investigations never revealed anything because there never was any there. The Republicans always knew it. It was simply to smear the Biden brand. But it just ate at them. They wanted to find something. They even tried to cook up more fake stuff because they wanted payback. They wanted to impeach Crooked Joe brand so bad, and they tried, and there was, so that just has to tell you how there was absolutely, because they would have grabbed onto any little thread to be able to impeach him, but there just wasn't anything there. And so this is treason against the United States, in our opinion, because the Republicans are willing to damage the country in order to grasp power. It was a brilliant way for Donnie and his Republicans to inoculate themselves from every crime they have and are committing. That is, to accuse the Democrats of every crime they themselves are committing, but accuse the Democrats first, even though they are lies. When Donnie and the Republicans' crimes get exposed, it's easy for them to claim he said, she said, and whataboutism, and to flood the zone with so much noise, the general public just gives up and just thinks it's just all just dirty politics. We're up here in the magnolia tree for our first episode of Aunt Betty's Blue Eyes Green Thumb. We are thinning the branches out of this lovely tree. The canopy is so thick that when the sun comes out in the springtime, it creates a lot of shade. So we're thinning out the branches so that we can achieve some filtered light coming into the garden on the southwest portion of the yard. It is the middle of February, just coming on the backside of winter. And these buds we see, they're just getting ready to break out. These buds have been forming all winter. Last fall when the leaves fell off, then these buds, though they were more immature, were there, generating all winter. So this is the time to trim the tree before all the leaves come on. So looks like this is gonna be busting out like in the beginning of the sequence were pictures from last year. Coming in, there are a few brave daffodils. We had some warm weather in January, so the few of these daffodils from the sunniest part of the yard, they came out. Then February, it's got a little colder. Here's some foxgloves that will be coming. And here's some Daphne. This always seems to have a few blooms on it, even over the winter time. Coming deeper into the yard where it's cooler and a little shadier as a result of the rhododendron and the arborvitaes. But we do now have some daffodils that are being brave and are just getting ready to burst out. They're starting to open up in here. Rhododendron buds, they form in the previous season as well and have been wintered over. So these will be one of the first to burst out as well. Oh, we did see, and look, here is a little hyacinth that has burst out. We noticed one in the other bed. And look, and here is another one right there. So this is the last week of February. So spring is upon us. Oh, did someone say action? We're gonna edit this in post. Aunt Betty is no historian on President Biden's career. What is in the public record is that Biden had been in political office and therefore in the public eye for 50 years, since 1972. As senator, Biden rode the train back and forth from Washington, D.C. to his home in Delaware over 8,000 times. This is not the behavior of a criminal. The behavior of a criminal is to be driven around in the back seat of a super long stretch black limo with tinted windows. Good Lord, Aunt Betty would be embarrassed to no end to be seen in a monstrosity like that. But if you have no taste and no imagination and Daddy's trust fund, well, I guess that's what you pick. The biggest black mark against President Biden is that when he was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee back in the 90s, he blew off Anita Hill's testimony describing Clarence Thomas's sexual misconduct, and therefore ushering Thomas to the Supreme Court, who has gone on to be one of the most disgraceful creatures to ever don the robes, an event President Biden has later expressed regret for. President Biden has been under a microscope for 50 years, and if there was anything beyond the garden variety, low-level political favors that are endemic in American politics, it would have been exposed years ago, in our opinion. President Biden's problem was that he was operating by the old rules and was not prepared for the warfare about to be lodged against him. Becoming president, he took the high ground and pressed the rule of unite the country and don't divide the country. He honored the tradition of don't malign the ex-president of the other party. President Biden made the miscalculation that Donnie was politically dead after January 6th. So President Biden's Department of Justice made the mistake of letting Donnie get away with all his crimes, thinking that this was an anomaly and that it would be best just to let it all fade away for the sake of not inflaming the MAGA base. But a few Democratic warriors in the House of Representatives knew that was wrong and went after Donnie, clarifying the extent of Donnie's criminality, and therefore forcing President Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland to respond, but 2 years too late, allowing Donnie to drag the thing out. And with the help of the criminal judge Eileen Cannon and the criminal Supreme Court, who protected Donnie and shut down the trials, we never got justice. President Biden did not have a muscular publicity or rapid response media team in place, allowing the Republicans to establish the narrative. When Fox TV, the Republicans, and Donnie pounded and pounded and pounded President Biden on every single issue possible, day after day, from the White House, we got crickets. President Biden and the Democrats failed the first rule in politics, that being, define your opponent before they have a chance to define themselves. The Republicans and Fox TV were effective in defining President Biden as corrupt and ineffective. So the beginning of President Biden's downfall was when President Biden ended the Afghanistan war, which was and should have been hailed as a great accomplishment. But Biden's team did not take control of the narrative of the Afghanistan pullout. All of the upsides of ending the war were not highlighted. Instead, crickets from the Biden White House, allowing Biden's opponents to set the narrative and highlight all of the setbacks. War is always ugly and messy. George W. Bush started that war to make money. President Obama kept it going for money. Donnie, in his first term, kept it going for money. Only President Biden had the moral clarity to end it. But Biden got crucified for botching the thing based on one unfortunate news cycle filming some refugees trying to get on the airplane. These Republicans have no shame. If President Biden committed any crimes, they were crimes of judgment. President Biden's Department of Justice should have immediately held Donnie accountable for insurrection and for stealing top secret government documents. And President Biden should have stuck to his inferred intention of being a transitional president. Everyone understood that to mean one term. And we think he initially meant it. We think it was when Donnie became the Republican candidate for the second time that President Biden thought he was the only one who could beat Donnie, already doing it once in 2020. Another failure of these spineless Democrats is the way they have rolled over and allowed the Republicans to name their own Democratic Party. This utterly unfair, Aunt Betty. The name of the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party. And if you are a member of the Democratic Party, you are a Democrat. But early in the 2000s, after focus groups were conducted, the Republicans adopted the term Democrat Party as a slur and disparagement. Democratic sounds too lofty and too close to democracy, where Democrat Party sounds like bureaucrat, autocrat, and most insidiously and subliminally conveys contempt because the last three letters spell R-A-T, rat. Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, a constitutional scholar, a genuine patriot, and frankly would make the best president America has had since Franklin Roosevelt. I repeat the name, Jamie Raskin, has attempted to correct Republicans during speeches on the House chamber floor, landing on disrespectfully deaf ears. Mr. Raskin has conveyed in interviews his idea of pushing back by using a pejorative such as banana Republicans, to which Mr. Raskin revealed that his wife felt that the high road should be taken. To Ms. Raskin, Aunt Betty replies, respectfully, we are way past the high road when it comes to Republicans and their criminal willingness to obtain and maintain power at any cost. Did anybody figure out what this implement is? Well, now it is time to reveal what this implement is. This is a human-powered laundry washing machine. This is a human-powered laundry agitator. This goes into your tub of clothes and hot water and lye, and you agitate up and down like this. This is good cardio and builds good upper body strength, which we always want to have. This is a human-powered laundry agitator. It is time to land this episode. If one good thing has come from Donnie's regime, it has exposed the blatant criminality and moral depravity of our political and economic systems. It has brought our society to the brink. Ordinary Americans can't ignore it anymore. What our rulers are doing to us. And now it is up to ordinary Americans to fix it. And we better go fast and hard because time is running out. We have barely skimmed the surface of the criminal enterprise that is the Stump regime. In future episodes, we'll take a deeper dive into individual criminals associated with enabling Donnie to perpetrate and profit off of the largest criminal enterprise in American history, the Stump presidency. We will call this segment The Dirty Dozen. In the next episode, we will unveil Aunt Betty's Bill of Rights, which is a list of reforms we will demand our Democratic leaders to initiate to bolster ordinary Americans, or we will vote them out of office. To my liberal-woke brothers and sisters, Aunt Betty requests, don't make the perfect be the enemy of the good. And please, let's not make Aunt Betty a liar. Let's hold space for and allow tolerance for people who may not have yet had the same experiences as us that would shape their perspective towards more open-minded thinking. Aunt Betty lives in a small town outside of Portland and has made friends who are good people, but who have voted for Donnie. They believed the lies. We have watched posts on YouTube from people who say to suffering MAGA farmers, "You got what you voted for and you deserve it." Aunt Betty admits there's a bit of a guilty pleasure in watching these posts. But before the grace of God go I. If this country is going to survive, we must come together. To our Republican voting brothers and sisters, Aunt Betty asks, do you have the fortitude to question that you possibly are being misled by Fox, by Donnie, and by the right-wing echo chamber? Or are you willing to let it all burn down just to protect your ego? Aunt Betty asks you to hold space in your hearts for ideas and people that are not what you are used to yet. For our fight is not with each other. It is with the dark-hearted people who have billions of dollars but will never have enough. In closing, let's take a moment to visualize, to meditate, to pray. There are many terms for the same idea on healing for our society, on healing for each other. Aunt Betty doesn't prescribe to know how it works, but does subscribe to the power of collective consciousness. God bless the world. This is Aunt Betty, signing off until next time, encouraging you to keep it clean.